try it now, Omar?
Yes, I got it. Thank you so much.
Of course.
All right. Folks, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
See a picture of me. All
Looks
right.
good to me.
Yeah, same. So a couple of things. I'll lay down a few of sort of how the session might go and sort of the expectations. One other thing, I don't see many people with their cameras on. I know you have your reasons for not having a camera on. That's fine. I'm also an instructor on the side of being at AWS, and I know that turning cameras on, there's research, you're a research-driven school. Research shows there's better discussions, better collaboration when you turn your cameras on. If you would please turn your camera on if you can. Of course, if you don't want to, you don't have to. But that's just my ask of all of you. Okay. All right, I'm gonna just talk a little bit about sort of, this is an amazing opportunity. Syed and Marufo approached me about having a conversation with Wayne Staters about the cloud. And I know a little bit about the cloud, so I was super happy to join and have this opportunity to speak with students. So what I want you to do is make sure that you're interrupting me. We don't use slides at AWS really, and I'll explain a little bit about the culture of AWS, just a little bit. So I don't have a ton of slides. I have like 5 slides, and then the rest is just us talking. So I'm an industry specialist. I will talk a little bit about my background in just a second, but I would really encourage as much open collaboration as you all can. And I think that's sort of the benefit of your club, building relationships and, making connections and so on. So please interrupt me, ask any questions at any time. All right, a little bit about me. My name is Omar. I live in Michigan. I've lived in Michigan my whole life, pretty much. I went to Wayne State. I went to Oakland for 1 semester. Actually, let me start over. I went to Macomb, and then I went to Oakland for a semester, and then I went to Wayne. And so I I'm also a career change. So I know many of you are not necessarily technology people, or your major may not be in IT or computer science. But I was a career change. So anybody that's kind of thinking about it and is maybe part of this club to learn more about technology in general, I can also talk to you about what it's like to be a career change. Like I said, come off mute if you have any questions. Very quickly about me, my former career, I got a degree in bio at Wayne. I was a double major. I had a degree in bio, and then I had a degree in psychology. I worked in a neuroscience research lab at the Institute of Gerontology there. And I switched careers right after I got my degree. So I was really interested in neuroscience. I'll talk a little bit about my career change and how that kind of helps me in my field. After that, I did an IS bachelor's, and then I got a master's in cybersecurity. I have a lot of certifications, too many certifications. The reason I have a lot of certifications because I also teach. And I came from the automotive industry. So when I changed careers, I worked many jobs in tech. I did a bunch of different areas in tech, and then I moved into the automotive industry. And then my latest job was AWS. Okay. All right. So let's pause there for a moment. Can I get like a show of hands or some emojis in the chat? How many of you are pursuing a field in computer science or technology? I know that technology is a broad term. I know there are a few engineers in here. Okay, I see lots of hands coming up. Okay, awesome. And let me ask you. Okay, comp sci. Hello, that's awesome. What are you all looking to get out of this session? So I'm an industry security specialist at AWS. Can someone tell me some things what is it about the Cloud Club that you like, or when you get sessions like this and they set things up, what is it that you're looking to kind of learn about when it comes to AWS or the cloud in general? Dan, I think, is that a hand? Sorry, Dan. Or is it a hand that you are a major? Okay, infrastructure. Very good.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
I
Dan.
see a lot about like, the cloud, like, it's like what most company use. Like, I think
Uh-huh.
it's what I want to get away from this meeting is like, how do you use it in like a real world use case? Because a lot of, the cloud is like, there's just so much to it. And when people hear it's like a buzzword, it's like, oh, it's the cloud, the cloud. Wait, but what even is it? So
Okay,
I think hopefully you will be able to share some information on that and, enlighten us, give us a little better idea on, what you really do with AWS.
for sure. Yeah, that's great feedback. I think forgive me for saying your name wrong. Is it Ifram? Ifram says, I want to learn about AWS in general and where to start. Zwar, how the industry actually works compared to school. That's a really good question. And then your Dan is a potential career change. So all very relevant and really good. Awesome. Yeah, I think that's a great agenda. So I had most of those agenda items, but diving deeper into AWS was not one of them. So I will pivot and we'll definitely do that. Okay, so a couple of quick things really quick. So maybe this could be the why Amazon slash what is Amazon Web Services and what is Azure, what is Google Cloud Platform. So ultimately, I'll start to talk a little bit about what is the cloud and why is it so important. And I'll talk to you about some real world examples and why we talk about cloud computing and why it is a buzzword. So actually, most organizations don't use the cloud in their IT spend today exclusively. So what I mean by that is of the 90% of infrastructure or 100% of the infrastructure, sorry, in the world, only 90% of it today, about 90% of it is on-prem. The other 10% is in the cloud. So we're only seeing about 10 to 15% of spend. But what we're actually seeing is the transformation that you get from using the cloud is really, really apparent. So the companies that you probably use every day, I know the crypto craze maybe is happening a little bit again, but it happened in 2021. So lots of you are probably using Robinhood or other brokers. Many of those are using AWS. So if you think about things like Uber, Lyft, these companies are using cloud computing in order to host their infrastructure and so that they don't have to worry about some of the things that you would have to worry about in a traditional on-prem environment. Okay, so I'll talk a lot more detail about what cloud actually is and in a few moments, but I wanted to kind of preface it with some of those principles about like, okay, you're hearing a lot about cloud, but what does it actually mean? Okay. So um, ultimately, what I wanted to talk a little bit about is sort of the question around the real world. So I train a lot of students. So I love teaching. It's one of my favorite things to do. At AWS, I'm a security specialist. Okay. There's a lot of different careers at Amazon. Okay. There's Amazon.com, which is completely separate. So I really have nothing to do with Amazon.com. In fact, Amazon.com is a customer of AWS. Okay. I know that sounds really weird. But so they use AWS and they have a bunch of specialists like myself that help them optimize their infrastructure, help them optimize for resiliency, help them optimize their APIs, all of the stuff that you would think like, okay, it's a company that's running cloud services. So every time you reach Amazon.com, that's actually AWS infrastructure, but we're actually separated in terms of I don't really deal with many people from Amazon. Of course, we have conversations and meetings and so on, but it's a completely different company. Okay. AWS is completely different. At AWS, we follow similar tenets and what we call leadership principles. And ultimately, when you think about sort of what is AWS or how does the cloud work, it's really important to understand first some of the history about cloud computing. Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of insight here. So if you think about any company in the past 20 years or 10 years, okay, if somebody wanted to start a company with me, what's the first thing you would probably do in terms of infrastructure? So let's say we had a big idea for a new technology, right? And we started a company. What's the first thing we would do probably? So we go through ideation, we have our idea, let's say, and we're ready to go. What sort of
Um, Figure out
yeah.
the tech stack.
Yeah, figure out the tech stack for sure. Yep. And then we start to think about, okay, what are we going to do for front end and back end? And, we're going to build our pipelines and so on. But we have to build those. So you're definitely, that's software engineering for sure, and I love that. But then we have to put that software somewhere, right? So where do we put the software?
Usually in the cloud.
Say again?
Usually in the cloud, that's some type of virtual machine like hosts are
Yeah.
since we don't have on-prem.
Yeah, so well, or I mean, sure, that's one design choice, right? So everybody said somebody said EC2, which is specific to AWS, of course. That's our virtualized our VM. But why don't we go buy a server though? Like, why do we have to host on the cloud? Can't we just like grab like a really strong server, we get a Xeon processor, we buy it, we bring it to our garage and say, Tala or Abdul or Syed, we're all gonna start our business. So we'll buy a big server from Best Buy, we'll put it in our garage, and then we can get started like that, right? So these are kind of, but other people are saying, no, we're gonna launch an EC2 instance and build software on that. That makes a lot more sense, right? So again, I'm not answering the question, but what I'm saying is these are the things that you have to think about, because organizations have to make these design choices, and there's many different types of organizations. Some of them are new, and you look at somebody like OpenAI, which is like cutting edge company that's like birthed generative AI. You look at like an Airbnb, a little bit older, but still kind of on the cutting edge. And sort of their decisions are a lot different than like a Ford or a GM. And so you need to understand both sides of the argument. Okay. It's very difficult to have a one size fits all for these organizations because they're so large and complicated. So that's the why is the cloud is something that I wanted to kind of dive a little bit deeper in. Okay. I wanted to kind of address some of the things. I made this is kind of a bad joke. It's like a dad joke. I'm not a dad, but maybe one day. But this is Syed put a slide that says, what do I do? And I just secure stuff and I go to conferences and it's pretty fun. And I talk to customers. I'm a consultant, so that's what I spend my time doing. And then when I'm off work, I teach students. That's literally what I do. And then I wanted to add this slide. I'm a security specialist. And so everybody thinks this is what I do, and it's not. And very few people do this. They do exist. We actually have some at AWS. I'm good friends with one of our pen testers. But whenever people think about security, this is what they think about. And it's not really the case. That's not really what we talk about. But I'll talk about my job in just a little bit. I want to show you one website, and then I'll link it for you. And then I'm going to get into what Dan is talking about as well. And then we can kind of shift the conversation to be a little bit more open. But I wanted to cover two quick points. So everybody's asking me like, what is the cloud? So I'm going to do two things really quick. I'm actually going to first show you a slide or it's actually a documentation. On AWS's website, we have, let me share this. I'll share my entire screen. On our website, we have what is cloud computing. And I wanted to walk you through some of these elements. And then I wanted to show you one other element called the shared responsibility model. So this is what the cloud really is about in just a couple of words. And I wanted to kind of walk through this piece. And then, like I said, I think many of you have asked about the fundamentals, which is really impressive for the group, to kind of try to want to dive deeper in sort of like, what is this all about? And kind of what are the fundamentals? So I'm happy to dive into that. I do this for my students all the time, and I'd love to do that. So if you think about cloud computing, what we're trying to do is, we talked about starting our own business. So what we want to do is improve and increase developer productivity. Okay. So when you are thinking about building an application, or you're thinking about deploying a service, whether it's internal, external facing, whether you want to be the next OpenAI or whatever the case may be, when you use cloud computing, many of you said, hey, launch it on an EC2 instance, you get to move faster. The reason you get to move faster is because you can launch services through the public internet that allow you to consume compute, and you pay only what you use. Okay, it's called pay as you go. So you can launch the most powerful machines technically, right, in the world, in your home, sitting in front of a website interface, click a couple of buttons and have access to the most powerful GPUs on the planet. currently today. And that sort of developer experience and sort of speeding up the developer is all about this idea of agility. Okay. So instead of having to go buy a server and then, you know, Saeed looks at it and says, hey, Omar, you didn't get a server that was strong enough. So go do another PO and purchase order and let's buy another server. And then I buy one that's too much. And then he's like, oh, you bought one that's over provisioned. So go return that and get something in between. You no longer really have to guess there. Okay. That's a component of the cloud, whether it's us or GCP or whoever, like whatever you want to use, that provides you the ability to do that. So what you're doing with the cloud is you're consuming services. Okay. When the cloud first started, it was really around like storage and queuing and a little bit of virtualization, right? And that people were happy. They're like, wow, I can store things and I don't have to like buy file servers and buy and configure file servers, right? So now the cloud goes way beyond that. The cloud is way beyond just storage and compute now. We have lots of services that can create an immense amount of value, such as running instances that do machine learning. So machine learning is very hot. I'm sure many of you have been talking about or using machine learning services, whatever LLM that you're using. Ultimately, what we're finding is that customers want more and more to be able to unlock innovation. If you think about what AWS is trying to do and other cloud service providers, it's about removing the lift for our customers so that the goal, the primary goal is, again, if, for example, we start that company, and I think it was Mabel who said EC2, what we're trying to do is let the companies that are innovating focus on innovation, and we'll focus on the things that cause a heavy lift, right? Like cables and networking. And we will focus on infrastructure and physical security. And the more and more that we're seeing that, the more that AWS is trying to take away from the companies' heavy lift so that they can focus on building like a really nice mobile app for the vehicle, or a really good streaming service, or a really good large language model service, or a good chatbot, or whatever the case may be. Okay, I'm going to cover a couple more principles, then I'll stop and leave it a moment for people to ask questions about cloud computing. We have global infrastructure. You can launch services from anywhere in the world. And if you think about solutions and in general services, what I tend to show students is I just bring up the AWS console. Many of you may have already seen this, but if you take a moment to think about like what this is, it's just a UI that allows you to interact with like thousands and thousands of APIs that do a lot of different things. Okay, so what do they do? What do those things actually do? If you click on the services and you sort of just look at my screen here, like I've said, it went from storage, right? Like we used to say, okay, there's storage, you know, this is one category. If you look now, it's way beyond storage, right? We have so many different services. We have analytics services, blockchain, and this goes for all cloud service providers. Database, of course, my area in life, security. We have machine learning, Internet of Things. So, you know, customers are using our cloud to communicate with their vehicles, to communicate with thermostats, smart devices, smart home devices. We're seeing large language models getting trained. We're seeing a massive amount of storage. A lot of the some of those apps where with sports betting, you're seeing like, you know, those apps are using the cloud. So any app you can think of can be consumed in the cloud. It's because we offer all of these services that allows our customers to build applications on the cloud. Okay. The last thing, and then again, like I promised, I'll leave it open for questions, is the shared responsibility model. So there is one of the benefits of using cloud computing. So people said, what is the real world implications? So the real world implications of cloud computing means that depending on the services you use or whether you're in the cloud or not, when you make that decision, the responsibility changes. So whatever career that you want to do, for example, if you want to be like a Cisco network architect, for example, and you go to a company that's purely in the cloud, it's probably unlikely that they're going to need your skills as much if, let's say, you were like a software-defined network engineer or somebody that's a networking specialist in cloud, right? On the reverse of that, if you're in an environment that's not in the cloud at all, and you're a networking specialist for like Juniper or Cisco, you're probably going to be more needed because it's just the environment, right? So like you're subject to the environment, okay? The key aspect to think about for the shared responsibility model is that depending upon what you're using in the cloud, that's going to change your responsibility, right? So again, if I go back to that application that me, Syed, and Paolo are building, we're thinking about like, okay, do we need servers? Well, if you look here at the bottom, let's say Syed and I have a billion-dollar idea and we want to launch in Europe and in the US. Well, in 15 years ago or 20 years ago, we had to buy servers, we had to buy a co-location, we had to buy one in Europe, maybe in Frankfurt, we had to buy one in the US. We had to set up two data centers, right, in each of those locations if we wanted to serve to both customers. And that would cost us legitimately, tens of millions of dollars. No joke. Let me show you what it looks like in the cloud. And I'm not being facetious here. I'm trying to show you how you can unlock power in the cloud, right? So let's say, Syed, we wanted to start a company in Europe. We would click on this. We would scroll down to Frankfurt. We would click on Frankfurt. And then we would click on EC2, and we would launch a server in Frankfurt, okay? There's some permissions things here. I can definitely launch an instance. Don't worry about that stuff. But the point is, that's how easy it is to launch in a specific region. So this is something that is under appreciated in the cloud, but it is super critical because you have this ability to launch a infrastructure across the globe literally by clicking on a region. So I'll pause there for a moment. So in conclusion, the cloud is a way that you can consume publicly services that we provide to you, whether those services are security services, machine learning services, database services, storage, compute, you name it. You can access those from an interface that allows you to deploy faster, to have cost savings, to scale up and down, and to do that in a way that's global. Does that answer your what is AWS question? I know I didn't answer the real world part yet, but did that answer the what is AWS question? Comments from anybody?
Yeah, it did.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you. Okay, so in saying all of that, I can spend a little bit of time on a few other questions. Somebody asked about the difference between the real world and the virtual world. In other words, what you had called your university studies. We are not actually in the real world yet. Okay. So Zwar asked, how does the industry work compared to school? Okay. So I am a senior security specialist. So I have like almost about 8 years of experience. So what I am able to do in my career is a little bit more advanced. So typically you're going to start off probably as an associate position. And a lot of students ask me, like, what is it like? What is the the difference between like school? The difference between your classes and the real world is a lot. But it also depends on what kind of job that you want. So like I mentioned, my particular field, I'm a consultant. And a lot of you are software developers and you want to be software engineers. So like I mentioned, we have over 300 services. If you look at these, there's a developer team for every service. So S3 has a lot of developers. It's one of our most complicated, oldest, and most scaled service, right? We store literally more data on this service than you can imagine. So petabytes of data, customers store petabytes of data on S3. And there's a service team of a bunch of software developers, software development managers, some security people. So depending on where you want to be, your path may change a little bit, okay? But I wanted to provide you, just to start off, with one resource. Okay, so my position, like I mentioned, I'm a consultant. And of course, there's lots of internships that AWS provides, but there's one program I wanted to index on. And this is a little bit more aligned to my career as opposed to your maybe a software developer position. But again, this is something I really wanted to make available to you. So here, this is called Tech U. Okay, let me link this. I'll give everybody a chance to open the link, and then I'll also share my screen. One of my goals for this talk is that I provide you as much resources as I possibly can. Okay, so other cloud computing providers have this similar type of program, but what this program literally does is you have to go back to school, but for a very short time, and it's very practical and hands-on. So once you graduate, you apply for something called Tech U, and you're paid really well to go in and get part-time on-the-job training, as well as part-time. So you get part-time on the job, part-time learning. What they do is they teach you about AWS. Everything is project-based. You get to build, you get to talk to customers, and then you usually get a mentor. Like perhaps you might get assigned me as a mentor. And you can go through and look at the curriculum and apply for a tech university position. And they will train you on AWS. And typically, very, very commonly, like, if you do well, you get a full-time position as a solutions architect, which is a consultant, like my role. So at a different level, like you'll be at an associate level. But this is ultimately one of the starting points I always show students, which is it's not that of course, the real world is very different, but there's lots of programs that kind of prime you into the real world. I have a lot of my friends and one person on my team who went through this program, and it is a very much a life-changing program. If you're interested in, and it doesn't again have to be AWS, look for any programs that you can that provide you with both real world experience, but also additional training. So training is a really good thing. The people that come out of the Tech U program, folks, are like really good solutions architects. They're very, very aware. They have they teach you how to talk to customers, how to present, a lot of the soft skills that might be a little bit tough for a software development engineer because they don't have any experience. You're behind a machine, you're writing code all day. This is a really, really good program. Of course, if you're not interested in becoming an SA, which is a consultant, you probably may not be as interested in this, but that's where I highly recommend internships as well. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, thanks, Saeed. Appreciate that.
When is this available? Is it like in the summer or something?
No, so this runs all the time. There's constantly Tech U graduates coming in and out. So if you just check the job postings, you'll be able to see Tech University as the label. You can apply for those positions alongside with internships. I will say
who qualifies for this?
Yeah. So basically, most people that are graduated from their respective universities, the Tech U program is really about people that are just coming out of college. So my friend, like I mentioned, he was a cook at his university and he got a computer science degree. He was literally a cook at the university cafe. He got into the Tech U program, and now he's my colleague. And we're actually the same level. Yeah.
That's nice. Is there a time period? Because I've been trying to find a job. It's kind of hard to get into the tech industry right now because they're looking for junior positions.
Yeah.
And I just needed something else, and it seems like a good idea. I graduated like August with my computer science degree last year.
Sure.
So I'm just trying to figure out how to get in without all this, oh, you need experience.
Definitely. I would look into as much as you can. I would look into internships still. So don't feel like you can't do any internships. And I would definitely try my best to look into programs like these. So I got into the Ford College Graduate Program, another great program. The Ford College Graduate Program, I went in as a tech specialist, and again, was a life-changing experience. I rotated through 3 different years. The 3rd year, I got into cloud and automotive security, and that sort of shaped my position at AWS as well. How many certifications do you need? So certifications, this is another thing. So I interview a lot of candidates at AWS. And what I really look for is like the certification for me is hardly important unless it's a very, very highly respected certification. For example, there's an ethical hacking certification called the OSCP, excuse me. And that's a very, very respected cert. It would get you a couple of points. But ultimately, Adam, what I look for is like people that have projects. Like you've built out your own project, or you have a GitHub repo that has some cool stuff in it. More so than like, do you know how to architect things? Like, have you tried to run demos during your certification training? Like, what did you actually learn? Because I'm really going to ask you more about like how you architected. I'm never really going to say like, hey, Adam, like, do you have a cert? Like, no, I'm going to ask you like, hey, Adam, it looks like you have a professional level cert. Like, can you tell me about the trade-offs between, using the web application firewall versus a CDN? Like, and tell me why you would choose one or the other, right? These are sort of the questions I care more about that people can answer. And you might be able to show me something, but it's really about like learning and being as hands-on and at Amazon, we're builders. We care about like people who can build. That doesn't mean you have to be able to build or you have to. I'm not a software developer like Syed and Tala and somebody else who had it. See that you guys could probably write way better code than me right now. I don't write production level code, and I probably never will. I write a lot of code to do automated tasks and to do interesting stuff in the security world, but it's more about building in general, having like a builder's mindset. That's really a big thing that we care about. So let's see.
I see MD had a
Yeah,
question
sorry,
that got
MD, I
kind of
missed it.
drowned out.
Sorry about that.
There
Yeah,
you
what
go.
are the downsides of integrating and challenges of integrating to the cloud? What do on-premises systems and servers do better? So I think like if you think about like migration use cases, there's a lot of challenges. The cloud is like there's a lot of elements of the cloud. If we go to like certifications, kind of to the point that got brought up earlier, I'll talk to you a little bit about, first of all, say you have an organization that does things in a certain way, and you've been on-prem for years. The cloud is a new world, so you have to learn the new world. How do you integrate things? What is like, networking considerations and so on? And I think where you start to see challenges is, first of all, like the people. So getting the culture, getting the buy-in, depending on the company. So if we're thinking of an older company, culture, the people, the processes, it's hard to break those things down. So there's a lot of things that get in the way of a migration. And some of those could be like realistic challenges, like, okay, does AWS have this feature? Yes or no? Does it support this service? Like, I want to move Oracle RAC or like a mainframe. And we try our best at AWS. Now we have like, my mainframe migration services and so on. But migrations are really complicated, especially for large companies that are a legacy. That's a big challenge, MD, from moving from the on-prem to the cloud. Cost is another challenge. So getting costs under control. So there's always trade-offs. If you let your developers run wild, they're going to innovate really fast, but then they're also going to spin up a lot of stuff and they're going to consume a lot of resources, and that costs money. And so how do you balance developer speed, but also don't let them do whatever they want? We have mechanisms on AWS to do that, but that's also a challenge. So this idea called cloud sprawl, it's like cost cloud sprawl, right? So like increased cost because you're letting innovation run free. It's a great thing in theory, but there has to be some level of control there. Okay. Again, on-premises systems may do the exact same thing. Ultimately, what I would ask MD would be, if you're a company, right? Do you want to build your own let's say you're an autonomous vehicle company, right? Like your Motional or your Cruise or I can say Waymo, let's say with Google, right? Do you want to build your own from scratch, like machine learning training and, build from scratch a storage system that can store petabytes of data on-prem? Or do you want somebody else to do that for you? So those are the kinds of questions that you have to ask yourself. So the pro, I mean, if you can do it on-prem and you've mastered that area and you can build that, you can build a storage system that scales to that level. And by the way, I'm not a salesperson, by the way. I have zero sales. Like, I'm just telling you like what I see. But if you can build this stuff on-prem, then there's no difference, right? If you control the costs and you can build out your infrastructure and you can buy your colos and you handle physical security and you can do all those things, or if you already have those things in place and you just want to train machine learning models, we have customers where I'll tell them, hey, that's not a great workload to move. So I don't know if that answers your question, Mbia, in terms of, I don't know if that kind of helps you think about the pros and the cons.
Yeah, it does. It just reminds me of the shared responsibility model. I
Yeah.
think that sits perfectly within the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a really good correlation, actually. Exactly. Like, what do you want to handle? And ultimately, you do get a little bit of theoretical control if you can pick up the server and like hug it, like next to you. Like, if you can sleep with the server, then yeah, sure, you can like get close to it. That's physically you have more control, right? Like you know exactly where the server is, and so on. Yeah, RT, I would have you would have to go on Amazon Jobs and search Tech U. So I can send you a link to Amazon Jobs, and you can search for the Tech U program there. I haven't looked at where they're offering different positions. I think right now the only one in the United States, I believe, is in Houston, but they open up all the time. Yeah, thank you so much, Marufa. And there's also internships, by the way, as well. So if you don't see any Tech U jobs right now, you can look up internships. So luckily, we did have a hiring freeze at AWS. You're seeing a lot of the stuff in the tech industry is retracting a little bit, but we are seeing some light at the end of the tunnel right now. So we're starting to see the positions pick back up and recs are opening up as well. Want to make sure I get to everybody's question. A CDN uses OAuth. It can use OAuth, Tala, but obviously that's a design choice. So in an interview, I would sort of dive deeper on like why you chose to use OAuth or how you're handling denial of service at each layer. I don't teach at Udemy. I teach at a bunch of universities. I was the director of instruction at one of the schools locally in Michigan. So I trained a lot of veterans and those that are career change or unemployed. I haven't made a Udemy course. I've thought about it, but I'll let you know if I make one and I'll give it to you for free. How's that sound? I love teaching, so maybe one day for sure. When you look at a new recruit's projects, do you look at quality or quantity? If so, how many and what level of quality would you want to see? It's a really good question. Me personally, when I interview, I care a lot about the fundamentals. So I like cool projects for sure. But if you show me some interesting things that are like based on the fundamentals, so you built an interesting project that does something cool. I had one candidate, this is not for AWS, but through the other areas, I do like evaluations of like skill set. There's a project where you can build a resume on the cloud. So let me send this to you really quick. This to me is something that I find to be super valuable, especially for those of you that are very new. It's called the Cloud Resume Challenge. And basically what it is it's the ability for you to build out let me send it to you. There's one for AWS, Azure, and GCP, so pick whatever you like best. But it's basically creating your resume in AWS using a lot of fundamental concepts. It's a lot of infrastructure, so it kind of requires that you understand the basics of infrastructure, and then you'll write some code in Python, very basic code that's going to count how many people go to your website. Somebody showed me that project and it was very good, and I was super happy, and I asked them what they would have done differently, and it was a very successful. So it doesn't have to be something crazy. It's you're telling a story in an interview. So if you're passionate about something and you build something cool, that's good enough. Expect though, in the real world, my job as a specialist in security, my job is to make sure that I understand what the customers want. So there's a huge interpersonal side of my job. So I have to hear what the customers are saying. I have to care about what they're saying. I have to be empathetic with what they're saying. And then I have to internalize all of that and deliver to them something that's valuable. So I have to think about like design choices. How is this going to affect them 5 years from now? Is this going to scale, right? Are they are they building out, are they writing this pipeline in a way that's going to allow 100 more users, 1,000 more users, 10,000 more users, 100,000 more users. So I'm dealing with the biggest customers in the world. So the design choices that we care a lot about, especially at the higher level, Nafis, is we care about how do you think about scale? How do you think about trade-offs, about cost, why you make specific decisions from a technical perspective? You'll learn that as you get more experience, but if you start to think that way today, I didn't think like that when I was in your shoes at all. I never considered those design choices. As I started to get into the real world, that was the biggest thing that I learned, is that's how you sort of provide more value in that way. In terms of level of quality, I mean, not a ton. I mean, like, of course, it has to run, and so on, but not we're not looking for like, and of course, it depends on the position you're applying for. Obviously, like your code, the code smells that has to check out, especially if you're going for a software development position. You have to study leak code and do all of that good stuff. But I can't comment as much on the software development side because I'm an SA. I'm a consultant. So I hope that answers your question, Epis. Does data analytics play a role in your day-to-day activities regarding AWS security? So yes, it does, all the time. When we think about like different areas that are super popular right now, security is one of them. AI ML, of course, is huge. Big data is also huge. Very big in our field right now. If you think about like industry, so I'm part of the automotive industry, there's so much right now in terms of data analytics because we're consuming so much data from the vehicle and other infrastructure around the vehicle. And from a security perspective, attackers are trying to do things that are very unique. They're trying to attack an API that's connected to a vehicle. So they have a mobile phone, or they may try to spoof a mobile phone. So they may be attacking your backend so that they can get to your vehicle. So we're not really seeing as much of the days where attackers are going directly onto the car and like with a screwdriver, or like, they're taking like a wrench and like, or breaking something, or, getting a drill. We're seeing them try to get through backend systems. And Murphy, to your point, when an attacker when you're trying to detect that sort of behavior, you have to get logs from all different places. You have to get it from the vehicle. You have to get it from charging stations. You have to get it from mobile apps. You have to bring everything together, and then you have to start correlating. And that's really, really hard to do. It's really easy to store data, like pay, $100, $200, $300, $500, $10,000 a month, and just keep like petabytes of data sitting in storage. It's a lot harder to do analytics. It's a very unsolved problem right now, and I get that a lot. Does having AWS certs and using the skills from the certification in personal projects provide you the skills that you might find in real life jobs? In AWS, yes, because as an SA, I'm tasked with building and like understanding requirements, and the certifications do help train you in those areas for sure. The underlying aspect of the job is a lot of hands-on experience and just getting exposure. So I think it helps. Personal projects definitely helped me. So I built a bunch of personal projects. I created an app that has machine learning elements to it. I constantly try to deploy new apps and workshops and so on. This is kind of leading, Kala, to my next resource I wanted to show all of you. There's something called Skill Builder. It's one of the most, in my opinion, amazing resources for students. By the way, feel free to add me on LinkedIn, all of you, by the way. If you have any questions, just message me on LinkedIn. I don't mind at all. I think the most important aspect of me coming here is connecting with me in the industry. I'll tell you right now, I've referred several of my students to AWS. I've also referred several to other jobs, and they've gotten different positions. So, building those connections, I think, are super important. So, feel free to connect. Just as oh, thank you so much, Said. I was just gonna do that. So you're super on top of it. So, oh, sorry, that was the wrong link. Ignore that. Sorry about that. So you see Skill Builder on my screen. So Skill Builder is basically an AWS course catalog. So if you really like cloud computing, you want to hone your skills, any topic. So somebody tell me in the chat, what topic are you interested in? That's awesome, Dan. Yep, that's really cool. And that's a gamification. So Dan said he's training in what's called Cloud Quest. We've created like a gamified learning. It's super awesome. Okay, yep, baby, you're interested in security. So that's awesome because I happen to really like security. You just type security in and you get a range of courses. And it tells you whether or not you have to pay or not when you log in. Some of these are free and some of them aren't. But you can click on machine learning security, for example, and this gives you the duration of time and so on. And you can sign into Skill Builder and look at what's free. In fact, the great thing is that you can search on just free things. So machine learning security is free. AWS Security Fundamentals is free. IoT security is free. We have all these kind of different primers. Okay, so that's ultimately what is the kind of something I really wanted to show you. And I know you're all students, and it's really hard to spend money. So use the free courses. You will have enough studying from free courses. It will last you a really long time. You can literally go through an infrastructure security learning plan for free, and it will walk you through multiple courses, 8 hours of courses. You'll learn how to protect EC2 instances. You'll learn networking basics. You'll do security basics. It's super, super helpful. So definitely check that out for those of you that are thinking about getting into the industry. Sarah asked, what steps did you take to become a consultant? I'll be honest, I didn't even have a plan. In fact, I didn't even want to know what cloud was when I changed careers. So I changed careers in 2014 and early 2015. When I first changed careers, I didn't know what AWS meant at all. I had no idea. Like what I basically did, Sarah, is I had a background in psychology and biology. So I used that. I really liked interacting with people. And I really liked sort of leading a little bit more and kind of understanding sort of like how people think from a security perspective. And I took a pretty normal route. I did help desk for a little while. And then I got an internship at Rocket Mortgage. It's called Rocket Mortgage. It used to be called Quicken Loans. And I did security work with them, and I fell in love with security right away. And then I went to Ford. I got into their FCG program. And then from there, I got into AWS working on automotive security and compliance, both enterprise and connected vehicles because of my experience. And in fact, in my interview, one of my weaknesses, Sarah, was that I had no experience as a consultant at all. And so my boss said, like, this is a weakness for you. But that he ultimately said, like, we're willing to kind of push you and help you kind of fill those gaps. So I wasn't a consultant from the beginning, actually. And consulting at AWS, in my opinion, has benefits. Like, we have no revenue. I don't have revenue that I have to like abide by or anything like that. So that's also super interesting and something I really yeah, no problem, Adam. I'm seeing some of the messages coming in. I have two messages. One I think is directly to me. So if you don't mind, I'll read it out loud. Why Nanya asked, do you need a coding language knowledge to be an SA? If yes, which languages would you recommend someone to learn? Another really good question. You don't need it. You don't have to have it. But if you are a developer, it helps you a lot. In my opinion, most of the things we build are serverless, event-driven. The strongest languages that you should know, honestly, is Python is just really solid. To me, I mean, I use Python all the time. I build stuff all the time with Python. I would say Python is definitely a language I recommend for cloud computing. So you're gonna write a lot of functions. You're going to have a lot of event-driven. So understanding like JSON and Python, JSON is obviously super straightforward. Is pretty much can get you really, really far in the cloud. But of course, if you want to be a software developer, but as an SA, yeah, I use, especially on the security side, Python is my go-to. How do I stay adept beyond certification training to meet this is another really good question. Yeah, for sure, Sarah. Okay, so this is a big part of my job, Marufa. So I'm an industry security specialist, so I need to understand the automotive industry really well. It's really hard to give you the short answer. because now we have to learn Gen AI. And when you work at Amazon, like things move really fast and then they expect you to learn really fast. I think the biggest skill, to Marufa's point, is like we have a leadership principle called learn and be curious. And I don't like to quote the leadership principles too much because you may work at other jobs and you're going to have different cultures and so on. But I really like that one, and I think it applies to everything. I really, really like the concept of learning and being curious, because if you can learn and you're really passionate about learning, many of you probably are, you came to this session, you're part of this club, that's going to take you the furthest because you're always going to be learning new things. So what I do to stay up on the industry, I do a lot of different things. So I read a lot of books in the industry. I take trainings whenever I can. You know, Amazon is pretty generous in terms of paying for top quality training. So that's a benefit that I have. I follow a lot of social media, Twitter, or X, sorry, showing my age, X and others, trying to look at what the industry is doing, where like looking at turning corners. I read a lot of articles. So I do a lot of things to stay adept in the industry, in the automotive industry, and it's changing like crazy. So automotive is undergoing a massive seismic shift right now. So I'm up to date on all that stuff. Again, I'm also benefiting from working at AWS. So in fact, I go to Switzerland every 3 months to talk about the United Nations. There's a new regulation coming for vehicles. It's called the United Nations Regulation 155, which is basically a number they give, but it talks all about cybersecurity in the vehicle, cybersecurity of the back end. So it's called a cybersecurity management system. So again, I have the benefit of representing AWS and going to Geneva, to the United Nations to speak on some of those topics and understand them. But it's all about getting involved, right? Like, again, when I was taking Wayne State classes, I had no idea that that's what I wanted to do at all. No clue. So just all I did was I was determined. I read a lot and I pushed myself. Those were the main things, honestly. I know it's kind of a weak answer, Marufa, but it's sort of my like inspirational like soapbox, and then I'm off my soapbox now, so I'll stop. Okay, it seems if you can put it in the chat so everybody can see, Tal, I see you message me direct. A lot of you are messaging me directly. I think you mean to put it in the chat, so I'll keep reading them out loud. Tala says, say you finished your cloud practitioner and developer cert. If you want to work hands-on but still deal with infrastructure and building in the cloud, which cert would you recommend in the professional level to take next? Definitely the associate cert. So the solutions architect associate, this cert right here. So I teach this cert actually to lots of different people, but mostly students. This is the cert that you want to take next, the solutions architect associate. So this is going to teach you the fundamentals of AWS beyond the practitioner, and it's more hands-on. If you really want to work in infrastructure, the next cert I would say would be the SysOps cert, which is like basically a cloud admin. And then you can pick a specialty area that you like, or go into the professional level after that, Tal. So I would say if you really like infrastructure, you're going to be focusing more on things like administration. So this one, you're going to focus a lot more on things like networking, for example, security, the kind of core fundamental topics, networking, SysOps, security, DevOps, architecture, so on. Those are the kind of certs that you're going to want to look at after you're done with the developer and the practitioner. Adam, yes, I did. The thing I focused on is I just got the Security Plus. Again, I didn't know what cloud was at all. So when I was in help desk, I got my first help desk job and I immediately started studying for the Security Plus. I skipped all the other ones. Certifications are really expensive. So high value, like high return certs is what I recommend. So I did the CompTIA cert first. By the way, just let me know if you guys like this format, the Q&A like this, or if you want me to switch it up or whatever. I can dive deeper in other concepts if you'd like. So just, keep me honest, Syed and others. Irma, you majored in psychology or you have a background in it. I'm a psychology major, but I'd like to get into the tech world instead and rarely see others who have a psych degree, so it's cool to see. I do have a psych degree. Yeah, I have a double major. I have a degree in bio and psychology, Irma. Yeah, listen, psychology is really, I know you don't believe me, but look, my favorite things are, so I'll tell you my hobbies just really quick. This is going to show you that I'm a psychology major. I like chess a lot. I'm a goalie, so that's high risk. It's all on you. Everything falls on you. I like poker a lot. So a lot of things that are about like managing risk and having like good presence of mind, that shows you that like I'm a little weird. So I'm a psychology major. That's, us psychology majors, we got to stick together, right? So I think psychology is an amazing field to get into, especially if you're transitioning into the tech world. So one of the weaknesses in tech is the lack of understanding people because we're on computers all the time. So having a degree in psychology, I used that in my interviews, and I didn't do it in a way that was like lying. I was very transparent and said, during my interviews, I would say things like, yeah, like I understand, I have a basic understanding of human behavior. It helps me understand why people make the decisions that they make. Cybersecurity is one of those industries where psychology is very relevant because you have to put yourself in an attacker's shoes. You have to think about why did somebody click on something? What were they thinking? You have to think about culture. Security is all culture. So I can't convince anyone to do anything by just giving them processes. Like we'd have to sit in a room here and really think about like, what is our culture? Like, do you actually care about security, or are you just doing it because somebody told you? So it's a lot of psychology that goes into like your human behavior, cognition, motivation. All those things are really important. So don't get down on yourself because you don't have because you think psychology is unrelated. We have philosophy majors, art majors, history majors. One of our L10s, so L10 is like way above me, like super above me. Philosophy major. So that doesn't matter at all. And I totally love that you're also also a psych major as well.
Hey Omar, could we ask what level engineer you are? You
Okay,
mentioned
yeah.
10.
Okay, so I'll be transparent. So don't give this recording. I'm allowed to say this, but I'm considered what's called an L6. I'm a senior. My promotion read was today. So actually my boss texted me, but I care about you guys so much. I did not once. I'll be an L7, which is called a principal. So a principal is considered very high. It's very hard at Amazon to go beyond a principal. If you do go beyond a principal, you become an L8. It's called a senior principal. There's only about 4,000 in the whole company. So it's the salaries for principals. It's NDA'd, so I can't and I don't even know the numbers. But if you look it up on like Blind or Levels or whatever, principals, L8 senior principals make like in the $1 million range. So
Nice. Okay.
it's like ridiculous salary. But L7 is quite good. It's a principal level, so it would be like I think in the software world, like a SDE 3 or 4 principal.
Okay. And one question before I go on mute. Say you're a principal at a company like Ford or GM. Is that transferable, or are you, usually starting from the bottom or at a lower tier when you move to Amazon?
It's a really good question. It depends. I've seen it's usually the latter, which is what you said. Typically, like a principal at Ford. So I was being promoted to a principal when I moved to Amazon, and they put me at a senior. I think they could have put me at even an intermediary. So I think I got a little bit lucky. But I did really well and I performed well, and that's all great. So in hindsight, it was great. But usually, like a director at Amazon is typically a VP at another company that isn't as like in the FANG and so on. So typically, you can maybe think one level lower if you go to Amazon.
Okay, thank you.
No, Roof, I'm good. Thank you. Okay, Manar, folks, you're directly messaging me, so if you could please put it so everybody can see, it's totally fine. But I just want other people to see your questions so that they have the context. So Manar asked, because the tech field is changing and is all about learning new stuff, do you know any types of jobs in the tech field that are basic and stable? Do you think cybersecurity for a major would fit that statement of being a basic, stable job? Yeah, I think you totally alluded to it, honestly. And I don't know if I know any better than you, Manar, to be honest. You're absolutely right. So Manar says the tech field is changing. How do I know what's stable? I think it goes, I know it's super generic and I'm sorry to have to reuse an answer. But it's all about learning and being curious. So I think cybersecurity is always going to be relevant, personally. There's just too much there, and there's too high of a demand and not enough engineers, not enough architects, not enough CISOs, not enough everything. And attackers are just getting better and better and trying harder. And, generative AI may have some implications that may make it even easier. We don't know yet. But I think it's stable, yes. But when you get into the field, you need to learn relevant skills. So I can tell you to go into cybersecurity all day long, but if you don't learn relevant skills, then all things are going to be equal. So definitely think about, the field you're getting into, and then how do you grow and continuously improve in that area. Depending, of course, on your life goals. Like if you want to just be an engineer and you're happy, there. But like AWS, for example, it's really hard to get in. It's demanding. It's harder. You have less work-life balance, and so on. So it depends on what you mean by stable and what that means to you. But ultimately, the field matters, but ultimately what you learn matters, and then what your career goals, and to do those things align. So I think, Manar, you're onto something there. I think we could spend the rest of the time talking about it, but think about like within that field, always keep a pulse check on what's happening, what's new, and try to stay as up to date as you can. If you're trying to intern at Amazon next summer, what would you recommend as a must-have that would differentiate you from the crowd? Thank you for all the answers. Of course, you're welcome. Intern, what would differentiate you? I think, some of the stuff that I was talking to Saeed a little bit, a bit as well, and Marufa about this as well. I think what is really important, of course, is skill set. So do you have like the fundamentals down? For me, it's fundamentals and then unique experiences. So joining the AWS Cloud Club, for example, is a really good unique experience. What do you think about things like helping the community? What are the projects that you've been working on? What are things that you can do to get more experience without getting necessarily getting real world experience, right? Like, do you help out at a local church, maybe doing some tech support? Or did you build a really cool project? Did you write an application? Did you build a mobile app? Any of those things, I know they're generic, but as an SA, like we're expected, do you write, even if it's not public blogs, but do you like contribute, or like, do you have a GitHub? Do you comment? Do you commit? Do you, what's the frequency? Like, these are the things that I think about when I think like, okay, as an SA personally, like, again, I'm focused on the SA position, Tala. We have to think about things like content creation. If you type my name in and type in AWS, you'll see like I have blog posts that I wrote. I do presentations, like things that kind of, how do you kind of enhance the community? Do you tutor? Do you, kind of help your colleagues? So think about some of those things. I think like when we talk about setting, but skill set goes a really long way as well. And grades go a long way. Like all those things matter. But to set you apart, I would say is like, what are the things that you're doing that it goes above and beyond, like the examples I listed? All right, I think that was it. So many good questions. Did I miss anybody? I don't think that. If I missed you, please let me know. Yeah, Joey, what's up? I'm not going anywhere, Joey. I'm here till at least 7. I do have to pick my mother up. She had surgery, so I'm so sorry to cut it short. But I'm happy to come by again and talk about a different topic, Saeed, as an apology for having to cut early. I know you might be bored of me, but I can maybe dive deep in some security concepts. Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, she's okay. I appreciate that, folks. Thank you so much.
No, Omar, thank you for your time.
We have extra time still.
This is more than enough. You've answered a lot of good questions so far.
Yeah. If you had to do it again, would you still do AWS or Google or Azure? Oh, that's a good question. I've never gotten that question before. Honestly, it's I think for me, it's kind of like when you learn the fundamentals of software development, like it would be similar to me asking like, do you wish you did C++ or Python? You would hope that like, that fundamentals you could kind of shift pretty easily. I think I could shift easily between them. I don't really have any regrets around that. I actually have regrets more around not learning the fundamentals of programming earlier. As the career change, I didn't do computer science. I feel like if I had that, I'm doing it now, like I'm taking classes and stuff now. That's the gap that I had. So like picking between a cloud service provider to me is like less important than like being as broad as I can around like the full stack. Everybody wants to be full stack, of course. But I would say like my bigger regret is maybe not doing like CS, but there were other trade-offs like cost and time and so on. So it worked out, but it's a really good question. I don't think I would have changed. And I can move between the CSPs pretty easily, actually. Reflecting on your promotion, what pushes you to advance in your career? Like, what goals drive the desire for growth? Does the idea of these changes make you feel nervous at all? Love the questions, like philosophy class now. Okay. Let me answer. So what drives me? At baseline, I'm pretty driven. So I work a lot. It may be good or bad. I have work-life balance issues. Like I teach and I work a lot. I travel a lot. I like making a difference. I really love teaching. So I love talking to students. This is like an amazing opportunity for me, like just to get a chance to hear your questions and connect with all of you. So I get driven by like purpose and money. So those are my two. Number one is purpose, and salary is really important for me as well because it gives me more freedom to do the things that I want. Of course, as anybody would imagine. But the number one thing that drives me is like purpose. So the culture of my company, the impact that the biggest reason I love AWS is I have a lot of freedom. I can choose to pursue the things that I want. When I got hired, they never told me like, hey, you have to go to the United Nations to speak about this regulation. That was like 0% in my job. Nobody even knew that existed. I built that path for myself. So I get a lot of purpose from like dealing with others, like having good work, like harmony with my colleagues, and just trying to make a small difference. I think is so. I have like, which is again why I think I like to teach. I think my growth. So personally, I don't really want to go beyond L7. Maruf, I have different ideas about what I want to do in terms of growth. To your point, and many of you may want to become L8s or L10s, and you might. And the equivalent at another company. But I'm happy being a principal and working on other things. So I think like, I have a very specific goal, and that's my desire at AWS or somewhere else. So, my growth there is kind of nearly capped, I think. Does the idea of change make me feel nervous? Early in my career, it did. I would say, again, being lucky that I got into a FANG company. And I think I have more freedom now to move around. If I didn't, it would definitely make me feel nervous. I had an opportunity to jump positions when I was at Ford, and I didn't want, and I ended up not doing it because of that exact reason. As you get more experienced and you kind of carve your path, you get less nervous about change because you have more control of your life. And if you have more control over your life, like I don't have kids, so a lot of the nervous feelings, I'm more inclined to go through change because I don't have as many of like the responsibilities as maybe some other, maybe even some of you may have that I don't have. But change definitely makes you nervous in general. But yeah, hopefully I answered that. It's a very good question. Do you receive any professional growth as being an intern at Amazon? For sure, Joey. Yes. It's all about mentorship. I have a mentor right now, a mentee right now that I'm mentoring. She just graduated from Tech U. She just got promoted. She's been my mentee for a year now. Love doing it. And it's all about mentorship at AWS. AWS is awesome because it's, there's a lot of great things about AWS. One of the cool things about it is we really care about like helping, like asking questions in Slack. Like I have asked every question under the sun. Nobody has insulted me. I've asked really dumb questions. I've asked really smart questions. I get the same responses from both. We care about knowledge sharing. Like, MD, if you have a question, like you're supposed to ask me. You're actually like, it's a negative if you don't open your mouth. And the culture is more like if you don't question me or like you stay silent, either I did something wrong or we didn't show you the way enough. But your highest leader person should listen to, I've influenced like vice presidents because I knew more than them and they respected that. And I've been telling you, like, not just saying this, like, and I'm not bragging, like everybody's done it. Because I knew more about the situation, I've influenced, vice presidents. So like, there's definitely mentorship, and it is a great, for the most part, in my experience, it's a really good environment for mentorship. What made you specialize in security? I don't know. It's like I've always naturally been, I can't really say. I don't know why. It just sort of, I think it combines some of those elements I talked about earlier, like the psychology and so on. It combined all of those elements, and I just felt like it made sense to my brain. I wanted to like help protect. I wanted to like go through and really talk about like why, again, why do people do the things that they do? Like, it's about risk. I really love risk. Like risk, I really like investing. I like I mentioned, I'm a goalie. That's like a lot of risk-based decisions. I like poker. Poker is a risk-based game. I love risk. It's like a weird thing. I like calculated, of course, right? Like security. I'm not like a crazy person, but I really like risk. It's just an interesting, and security has a lot of risk. Maybe that's the reason. I don't know. You're making me think, baby. I haven't thought about it in a long time. So, how often do I use AI? I use AI a little bit. So, the main use case for me using AI is I use Code Whisperer, which is similar to Copilot. So no marketing here. So once in a while, I've been using Code Whisperer a little bit when I'm building out some big projects as a code assistant. That's the only use case that I've been using. I've been researching a lot of AI use cases in security, especially for automotive. I don't see a ton yet. I think they will come. I am bullish on AI. So I'm one for one, maybe. I was not bullish on crypto. But again, crypto's looking kind of good right now. So if you guys bought when the craze ended. Anyway, no, I'm just kidding. But yeah, I'm bullish on AI. I think it's real. I think it's over exaggerated as usual. But over time, I think the use cases are going to come. I mostly use it for code assistant. That's the primary use case. Then yeah. Could you send us your LinkedIn so we can connect? Thank you, Saeed. How long would it take to grow? That's a hard one. I think it just really, really depends. I have seen people climb. So I'll give you an example. Blake, my buddy, he started out as an L4, which is an associate. So if we say associate, intermediate, senior, principal, right? That's sort of the range. Principal is really hard to get to. Associate's how you start out. He went from an associate to a senior in about 4 years. So that's pretty crazy. Like that's 2 promotions. And the promotions are huge. Like these are like enormous jumps, by the way. Just to, these aren't like, okay, like you get a $5,000 raise. Like these are like massive jumps. So he is like an overachiever. He's an excellent SA. So it took him just that time. And I think it's very possible. It just, Amazon is clear, much clearer than other companies about what the expectations are. It's hard though. It's a lot of work, but you can definitely grow pretty quickly, I would say. Other questions? All right, just launching Slack here. Any others? Okay. Check out Skill Builder. Check out some of the other things that I mentioned. And please add me on LinkedIn. And if you have literally any questions, like I said, message me directly on LinkedIn. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Yep. Thank you. Does Amazon have a public community where we can meet fellow cloud enthusiasts? In Michigan, I'm assuming. Yes, I can resend Skill Builder. Do me a favor. Okay, so let me take that back. I'm sure we do in Michigan, but I want to give you a better answer, Kingsley. So, Said, if you could just send me a follow-up email with that question, I will provide with, if you want to CC Kingsley on it, I want to respond a little bit more specifically to that
Okay.
question.
Yeah, Kingsley, could you drop your email in the chat, please? We'll follow up with you.
Did you learn more on your own or through school when learning security? Definitely on my own. Look, I'll be completely transparent. It was majority on my own. I did not, in terms of just like AWS and cloud and so on, like my career path, automotive, cloud, and so on. I'm not saying, I mean, I could have taken better classes, so that's partially on me. It was a lot more